Then we stared, looked straight into her eyes. I said, you're about to have the best night of your life. Switch. Two of the biggest drum and bass production outfits, Chase and Status and Hedex, just joined forces to create one of the craziest jump up tracks of 2023. The track is called Liquor and Cigarettes and also features the popular UK rapper Ardee. In this video, you'll learn how to make the intro and its various layers, the high energy drums, and the main bass sounds. Shouts out to the originators of this track, Chase and Status, Hedex and Ardee. Go check them out on Spotify. What makes this track crazy is all the melodic and jazzy elements, which then break down into this massive jump up bass drop. Comment down below and let me know what other tracks you'd like to see me deconstruct. Alright, without further ado, let's get it. Alright, let's talk about the drums. And for the main beat, I found this break layer from Lander Studio, which has a pretty comprehensive sample library. Lander Studio also comes with their mastering online service, as well as a number of plugins. It all comes with the Lander Studio monthly service. If you want to learn more, check the links down below. So here's the main break. Now I'm going to be layering other breaks on top of this. So I'm going to take off the bottom end of this break. Here's the kick. I like something oomphy for this vibe, nice and tight. And I'm using the modular snare instrument from the Rollers kit. Love the punchiness of the snare. And with the modular snare instrument, you can adjust various parameters for infinite variety of really tough sounding snares. So all you had to do is use the macros and change it to create new snares. And then to add a little more funk, I found this funk break from the Hybrid Breaks sample pack. Just taking the bottom end out of it. Now I found that there's a lot of energy in the drum track of Liquor and Cigarettes. So I found I needed to add one more layer. So I found this shuffle loop from the Acid Lab sample pack. And then finally just a little hi-hat for some punctuation on those main hits. Let's hear the drums all together. Finally, I grouped all the drum layers together. Then I'm adding I Heart New York 2 on the drum bus. This just glues all the drums together and adds a little more excitement on the top end. Here's the before and after. I just find it sounds a lot more cohesive. Alright, let's talk about the sounds in the intro. So during the intro, there are kind of a brass ensemble playing this chord progression. So I kind of recreated that ensemble here. And I'm doing this with Contact's Brass Ensemble Symphony Essentials. What's really cool is this really big knob that makes your brass sound really big. Watch this. Love how realistic these brass sounds sound. And then there's a sawtooth synth stab that plays along with the trumpet progression. All it is one sawtooth waveform, and then we're filtering it. And just make sure we're using an LFO. I'm using an envelope mode of LFO, and then it's controlling the filter cutoff to make that stab sound. And instead of using a repeating LFO, I'm manually writing the notes because it plays more of a manual rhythm. Now, I'm automating the filter over here so it opens up as it builds up. By the way, I'm almost at 100K subscribers, so it'd be awesome if you can hit the subscribe button. YouTube analytics shows that only 50% of viewers are subscribed, so it'd be really awesome if you can help out my channel. Thank you and big up. And then as it approaches the drop, there's an additional sawtooth instrument that plays more of a low mid layer. It's just a sawtooth with the top end filtered. Notice that I'm playing this melody here. It's playing a chord. Now with this progression, the bottom is playing the bass line and there's an additional note on top stacked. Usually we're used to a perfect seventh being stacked on top of the root or bass note. But this time what they used is a major third on top. I guess that's why the intro is more uplifting. Now during the intro, the rapper known as Ardee is building it up. And as it builds up, there's this filtered break that slowly opens up. So I'm using another break from the Acid Lab pack. That low pass filter is what gives it that underwater effect. And you want to gradually increase that filter up. It just helps with the build and tension. Finally, there's a saxophone lead playing on top of all this. And I'm using Kontakt saxophone instrument to play this. Notice that kind of slide at the very last note. So what I'm doing is with this last F, I'm using MPE note expression. All you do is click on this note expression panel. And then when you highlight this note, there's this line and you can add additional dots to kind of change the note. Now you want to hit Control or Command 4 so it locks and quantizes onto a specific note and steps. That's how we create that glide. Now here's an alto saxophone instrument I'm using in Kontakt. I believe it's part of the Kontakt Factory library. Really sweet sounding and realistic saxophone. As we get into the drop, this huge brass stab comes in. And once again, I'm recreating it using Kontakt's brass ensemble. Just a really fat sounding brass. And the trick here is to use the different performance modes. If you notice on the bottom left here, we have staccato, which is those short brass notes. As opposed to if you had sustain, which is long. So there's different modes. Make sure it's on staccato and adjust the dynamics if you want it nice and bright. Then I removed some of the bottom end and then I added a bit of distortion to make it a bit nastier. Then I added an underlying brass stab sample. I found this from Lander Studio. All together. All right, let's hear all the intro sounds together right into that brass drop. Heavy, heavy, heavy. By the way, today's video is sponsored by Skillshare. I just want to let you know about my new masterclass in chords. In this class, you'll learn about my no-brainer approach to writing deep and complex chords that'll make you sound like an advanced producer. Think of those deep, feel-good chords that you find in 90s jungle, deep house, and even UK garage. I never had any formal training in music theory, so I had to learn everything from the ground up. So my approach is perfect for anyone who's a beginner in music theory. For newcomers, Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes to expand on your passions and creativity. From graphic design, music theory, video editing, and social media, Skillshare has all the topics you need in your journey as a music producer today. Also, I have a number of other classes on Skillshare where you'll learn the basics of drum editing, chopping up breaks, writing bass lines, and even an in-depth beginner's tutorial on using Serum. It's called the Ableton Essential Exercises. I'm sure you'll get a lot out of it if you're a beginner. The best part is that the first 500 people that use my link down in the description will receive 1 month free trial on Skillshare. So check it out, and I'll see you at my class on Skillshare. All right, and now on to the part that you've all been waiting for, that main gritty bass sound. Now, actually, what I'm doing to recreate it is I'm using the UK Tour preset from my Gnarly Serum preset pack. And by the way, I actually have a full video tutorial on how I made the Mackie G Tour bass. If you want to see that, check this video up here. But of course, I know you want to see how I made this sound, so we'll quickly go through the settings. We first start with this wavetable. It's called the MB Triangle. It serves as that bottom layer of the bass sound. And notice I'm playing at an octave below. And make sure unison mode is 2. It just makes it sound nice and wide as opposed to just 1. And then I'm adding an additional wavetable oscillator B. This one's playing 1 octave and 7 semitones above. And this is using the BS2 acid wavetable. That perfect fifth, or known as +7, just gives it that bright drum and bass uplifting vibe before. And then we're using LFO1 to modulate the cutoff filter. I'm using a low pass filter. Just make sure A and B are both enabled here on the filter. Notice the shape is controlling the cutoff. And then going into the effects section, we're adding some distortion. The key here is that LFO1 is also controlling the drive or amount of distortion here. Notice the shape of my LFO here. This is an envelope mode, so it's not a repeating LFO. It's only playing the cycle once, and it's using a half note here. And notice the shape. It's kind of a shark fin shape. Then we add some multi-band compression. Just turn on the compressor and just make sure multi-band is on. This just brings additional nuances, frequencies, grit to that bass. And then turn on hyper dimension. This makes it sound nice, wide, and modern. Finally, I'm using the EQ to remove the bottom end from this bass because this is the top end or the mid, and we don't want any of the bottom end. Now going back to the oscillator, I'm now using the sub oscillator as the sub bass. Just make sure it's playing -1 here. It's set to direct out so it doesn't get distorted by the effects. And it's sounding good. Finally, I'm adding additional distortion with rift here to make it nastier and grittier. And then I'm using a bit of EQing. Notice the subtle movements here just to bring certain sounds up before, after. Now just make sure in Serum you enable mono and legato mode, as well as turn on always portamento. We want some glide. My glide's at 143 milliseconds. The reason is in the bass sequence, you go through higher notes here and it sounds funkier when you glide from the low notes to this high note up here. So listen to how it sounds. That's how it sounds straight without glide. And going back to the Serum, let's enable the glide and set at 140 milliseconds right now. Listen to how much funkier it sounds. Has more of that jump up UK vibe. Now let's check out this pattern for the bass here. We're gonna listen to it, but notice there are gaps in between here for the bass. So we're going to be filling that gap with a lo-fi wobble sound. I'm calling this the Hedex wub. Shouts out to Hedex for all the crazy sounds he's been making. This bass sound is simply a sawtooth waveform on oscillator A with another sawtooth that's playing an octave higher. I'm using a bandpass filter. I'm using LFO1 to modulate the cutoff here. And I have a bit of distortion and also some EQing and some additional filtering using a phaser filter. So this is something new that I've learned. So let's just check it out with everything turned off. It will show you the sound from the ground up. So here's the basic sawtooth, oscillator B, filter, bandpass 24 being modulated by LFO1. You got that wobble sound. Finally add some distortion. And then remove the bottom end using the EQ. And then I'm using an additional filter. This time I'm using the Phaser 48 setting. It's something new that I learned that brings out certain harmonics in the filter. And then finally, I'm enabling the sub oscillator as direct out. And the level of that sub is also being modulated by LFO1. So I'm planning to release a bunch of presets like this in my upcoming Gnarly Volume 2. Stay tuned for more details. So that lo-fi wobble is just a simple 4 notes like this. And then let's listen to it with the main bass. And finally, let's hear it with the drums. Sounding sick. And I also have a full tutorial on how I make wub and wobble bass sounds. You can look for that video up here. Now, one of the things that makes Liquor and Cigarettes such a high energy track is those little pause edits with the brass stabs. In that section, we have these little vocal snippets that go switch and then stop and all that. So I found equivalents on the Lander Studio sample library. Here's a switch sample.
Switch.
I also have a female version I found on Splice.
Switch.
Here's some additional samples also from Lander Studio.
Bang.
And then we layer these with the brass stab, the drum hits cut up.
Bang.
Same thing for the initial drop.
Switch.
Now that main grit bass section plays for 16 bars and then switches up to more subdued low pass Reese. So here's the Reese sequence. Notice this sequence mirrors that progression of that brass ensemble in the intro. And this section is layered with some of those intro sounds as well. So here it is. Alright, now that we have all the sounds and I've recreated the main arrangement of the track, just for jokes, let's sing along to Liquor and Cigarettes. Liquor and cigarettes still on my breath. 20 missed calls, 150 texts. She said, I know that you've been out with the mother chicks. I keyed your car up and I'm on my way to see my ex. Liquor and cigarettes have got me in a mess. But right now I'm up and I think I feel my best. Shouting leads to arguing, from arguing to sex. I like to party, I hardly think that's disrespect. She said, yeah. I said, yeah, I don't care. She said, yeah. I said, yeah, I think that I made it clear. Then we stared. Looked straight into her eyes. I said, you're about to have the best night of your life. Alright, now that I've graced your ears with that Grammy-winning performance, let's hear the track in full. Liquor and cigarettes still on my breath. 20 missed calls, 150 texts. She said, I know that you've been out with the mother chicks. I keyed your car and I'm on my way to see my ex. Liquor and cigarettes have got me in a mess. But right now I'm up and I think I feel my best. Shouting leads to arguing, from arguing to sex. I like to party, I hardly think that it's disrespect. She said, yeah. I said, yeah, I don't care. She said, yeah. I said, yeah, I think that I made it clear. Then we stared. Looked straight into her eyes. I said, you're about to have the best night of your life.
Switch.
Alright, there it is. I move over Ardee. I'm quitting producing and becoming a full-time rapper. Big it up. Hope you guys enjoyed watching me recreate Liquor and Cigarettes. It's a massive track. And there's a lot going on in this track, from the multiple layers that build on that initial chord progression to the bass drop, the high energy drums, and that awesome massive brass switch up. It's interesting to look at all the elements that make up such a heavy hit. If you want to check out any of the samples or presets that I used today, you can check it out at deviantaudio.com, where we have a number of preset packs, sample packs, and Ableton kits to help you along your journey. My name is Stranger. If you want to improve your music production, especially with dance music and drum and bass, then this channel is for you. If you want to see how I recreated Chasing Status and Boo's Spotted On, check this video up here. And if you want to see more serum and bass sound tutorials, check this playlist up here. Alright, that's it guys. Until the next video, thanks for watching, stay creative, and peace out.